Michelle, now, at what point in a marriage does a husband change from being the hot guy you brag to your friends about and texted all day long and that you couldn't keep your hands off of to your roommate in the friend zone? Like, what advice can you give to the women watching this show who miss the passion and excitement they used to have and want the step-by-step instructions on how to light that fire again?
Well, for me personally, it was, I mean, it totally goes back to the five love languages because I wasn't getting any of those acts of service at all, but my response to them instead of communicating was to just get all frustrated and be angry and nag and shout and go to bed. So it was kind of a vicious cycle that just continued every single day. And I'm not saying it was all my fault because I don't believe that. It was definitely part of it. I wasn't giving him what he needed, and he wasn't giving me what I needed.
And the thing is, you guys didn't know what you know now.
Right. Exactly. At least I didn't know what I know now. Because I was single for 5 years before Travis and I met. So I spent a lot of time on bad online dates, but also like really figuring out who I wanted to be and what I wanted and where I needed to change. And it was very difficult. Trust me, I am as stubborn as they come. And I always tell
As she glances over at you for your reaction.
I always tell Travis that I'm always right. But I mean, it didn't work out. So clearly there was something I wasn't doing right. I mean, no matter how bad your marriage is, it doesn't fail just because of one person or one single thing. Like, it's a culmination of things that build up. It's a snowball.
What she said was interesting because she said cycle. And so that's really what the love languages helps you do, is create a communication cycle where it's constantly flowing back and forth, if that makes sense. And what's interesting was I can remember just like it was yesterday sitting in a marriage counseling session previously, and the counselor said, well, it sounds like, not sure why, but it sounds like he quit speaking, your love language. And I said, I did it on purpose, because after time, when you stop speaking my love language and that cycle stops, then unfortunately, and this is important for people out there to look at this, my response stopped too. So I quit. So the cycle stopped and it doesn't work. So with my acts of service, when I do that, and then she gives me a simple word of affirmation, and it doesn't have to be grandiose or anything like that, just like she said, but that keeps the cycle going, if that makes sense. So, and sometimes, and sex does play a part in that when you feel like you're being communicated with. So I talk with my hands a lot, but that's what keeps this whole thing going. If I do act of service, you respond in kind with a word of affirmation, things like that, then that's what keeps this.
It's almost like you can't water your plants once and never water them again. They'll die. You got to keep watering them, right?
Right. But I feel like I didn't answer your question about what to do. I said what not to do. I think one thing with Travis that we both do is that when we communicate something or when he communicates something to me and maybe I don't get it or I don't understand it, instead of getting frustrated, he figures out another way to communicate it to me that maybe I will get it. And I think that's part of the, I think that's a lot of it too, is that we both figure out, okay, it's kind of the same thing. Like, okay, he's not understanding what I'm communicating, so I need to communicate it differently instead of just, butting heads and saying, you have to listen. I figured out a different way.
So what I'm hearing you saying is that it's not about saying what you said and saying it louder and louder. What
Right.
it really is that, okay, I'll take a little ownership here and say, all right, maybe what I'm saying makes sense in the way that I'm saying it to me, but it's not registering with him. So I need to figure out a different way of saying it. And that takes a bit of introspection. And oftentimes we have to own that, all right, maybe I can improve my ability to communicate, or I can just find ways to communicate to different people and realize that there isn't just one way to communicate to people. But to your point, that takes some emotional maturity to be able to say, you know what, I'm not going to get mad. Let me see if I come at this from a different angle.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, I have a perfect example. We were disagreeing about something. I don't remember how it started, but he was trying to explain it to me, and I just wasn't getting it. Like, I was just like, whatever, Travis, just kind of brushing it off. And he sent me a link for something to read, and I read it, and I was like, okay, I get it now, because he knows I'm a reader. So he sent me, this article to read, and it wasn't him yammering at me. It was me reading it on my own, and I was like, okay, I got it.
And it wasn't anything where I said, here, read this. This is what it was, hey, I know you take your time and read this. This is what I was trying to say. Maybe read this part of it, and that's what I was trying to get at. So again, kind of going along with the communication thing. So husbands out there, don't send your significant other or whoever just a link and say, here's what I meant. It's more of, it's just interesting to find something that frames what you're trying to say a little better.
And I think what you discovered is, because Michelle just said she likes to read, and if you notice, and I'm presuming at this point that, Michelle, what you like to do is when you get information, you want to think about it first before you have to respond.
Yes.
Okay, so being in a situation where he says to you, blah, 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 and you're like, okay, I can't process all that right now and respond right away, and that creates anxiety. So the way he approached it, he recognized, number one, he needed to give you time to process that. He said, here you go, and gave you time to process it, and now he recognizes that's the way to communicate with you when he's talking about difficult subjects. Now that point, difficult topics or potential ones that could lead to potential arguments or fights. Do you find that you've changed your approach to those kinds of conversations in this marriage versus your first marriages?
100%. Yes, absolutely.
And how would you say you've changed it? What would you do differently?
Well, I still have a few slip-ups.
I would say I've changed it in immediate. What I told Michelle early on, as I said, what I'm going to promise you is I'm not going to let this car get so far off the road that it's really hard to get back on. So like right when it starts hitting those annoying things on the road that tell you to get back on, that's when I'll start talking to you. And it's hard. It's really hard for guys to do that, I'll admit. And sometimes our communication methods are very archaic or caveman or things like that. So, but a lot of that came from, the failure of a first marriage. And so those are some of the things that hopefully your listeners, if they're in a second, third marriage, they'll get something from this. But if they're in the first, if they're in their marriage and they love their spouse and they want to make things work and they're having these issues, I wouldn't want them to get so far off the road. You know what I mean? So just when you start to veer off, I use that exact analogy with you.
Yeah, I know the tendency, I can relate to this in my own life, is oftentimes to not want to talk about the really difficult topics.
Right.
And I've since learned, once you hit the rumble strips, you know what? Just say it. The worst thing that can happen is they get mad, walk out the door, and they may come back, they may not come back. If they don't come back, then you were already way past the rumble strips. You just didn't know it.
Right.
And if they do come back, to Michelle's earlier point, maybe she just needed a minute to process what you just said before she had to respond to you. If you enjoyed the show and want to see more, join our Facebook page called The Man Cave by Gentlemen United. All of our shows, tons of additional content, and invitations to future shows are posted there. You can add to the conversation and suggest future discussion topics. Please like, comment, share, and most of all, subscribe by clicking the Gentlemen United icon. I promise it's free. Thanks again for joining us in The Man Cave.
Enjoyed the show? Like, share, and subscribe. And thanks for joining us in The Man Cave.